Meet your new partner.
I'm too old for this.
Hey everybody, welcome to Cinema Gulp. I'm Ben.
And I'm John.
And this is part one of our series revisited of the Lethal Weapon franchise.
So Lethal Weapon 1, released in March of 1987. It started as a spec script by a 25-year-old Shane Black, who appears as an actor in Predator and helped write a number of other buddy cop genre films along the way. But his original script was a very gritty and dark cop thriller, kind of envisioned as an urban western and inspired by films like Dirty Harry and other cop kind of dramas. He saw the potential in, or I guess, I don't know if Black really saw this, but Hollywood certainly saw the potential in odd pairing duos such as things like 48 Hours and even Beverly Hills Cop. Even though it doesn't get the label of a buddy comedy, it kind of does with the, I'm blanking on their names, please help
Taggart and Rosewood.
Taggart and Rosewood. Like, even though there's a threesome there, it is still kind of a buddy cop movie in that way. And I think it helped with the building blocks for what Lethal Weapon built on. So Shane Black was teaming up two wildly different heroic characters that would have to learn to trust each other and to battle their differences, as well as ruthless villains, to create a bond stronger than steel. And the script really cemented the approach and some of the tropes that we get for all buddy cop genre movies moving forward. Originally, the Riggs character was a kind of an older, Dirty Harry type outsider on the force. He was the kind of cop that no one wanted to work with, but everyone knew that his brute force approach got results that no one else could get. An original casting idea for that role was William Hurt, and I can kind of see the thought process there. Like, he's not a tough guy. I don't get it from the kind of the Dirty Harry tough guy side of it, but I get it from kind of the actor that he is. I could see him kind of playing that, the age and everything like that. I don't know. I get why the studio was like, no, we're going to go in a different direction, but it's an interesting thought of William Hurt filling that role. The original script was more violent, had a bigger finale with like the Hollywood sign on fire and cocaine raining down over the Hollywood Hills, which is a visual that I kind of wish we got. They kind of end up with a version of that on a smaller scale with all the heroin raining down on the street. It almost just kind of looks like smoke and stuff. It doesn't sell it as well as like, oh, this is drugs raining down on the street. And I think the Hollywood Hill idea with the cocaine would have made that point a little better. But obviously that was a big budgetary thing. And at the end of the day, we didn't really need it. I think we got a great finale in this movie. The script was shopped around Hollywood, finally landing at Warner Brothers. The studio was interested in Leonard Nimoy to direct this, hot off of the success of the last two Star Trek films. But he wasn't interested in making an action movie. He didn't feel that was his forte, and he went on to do Three Men and a Little Baby, which was a pretty good movie, but certainly not Lethal Weapon. If Nimoy had signed on to make Lethal Weapon, I think it probably would have been a one and done. Who knows? I just can't picture that.
No, I think it worked out the way it should.
And this fits perfectly with the person that they did go with, Richard Donner, who was known for at that time having made The Omen and Superman and The Goonies, all big hits, but none that really, I would say, fit the mold of what he's more known now as the Lethal Weapon style director. Donner was not interested in making an action movie, but he saw the potential in focusing on character development and the bonds of brotherhood, and thought that it would be a much more realistic approach to the 80s one-man army machismo that we were getting at that time. Donner felt that the script was too dark and wanted to add a bit of humor and heart, so he brought in writer Jeffrey Boehm, who Donner was working with on the script for Lost Boys, which Lost Boys did not come out till, I believe, August or September of that same year of 1987. But because of the connection of Boehm working with Donner on that script, they put it on a marquee in the movie. So in the background, in Lethal Weapon 1, you see this year's smash hit, The Lost Boys, written on a marquee in the background. And I love that because that means that within the movie universe of Lethal Weapon, Lost Boys is a movie that Riggs and Murtaugh could go watch, and that is freaking awesome.
Shit.
Other casting choices for Riggs, they were considering Christopher Reeves, which again, I think kind of an interesting choice. Doesn't seem like the tough guy that Riggs is, but the character went through different iterations as the script evolved. And yeah, you could see why, you know, they were considering Reeves because his connection to Donner with making Superman. Bruce Willis was another name that was actually considered at that time, even though he didn't have any status as being an action hero. Probably they looked at him the same way when they considered him for Die Hard. It was like, are we going in the right direction? This guy's not an action star, but you know, we kind of want to fill the role with an everyman in that film, specifically Die Hard. So it made sense. I don't know if he made as much sense to play Riggs the way that we see Riggs, but he could have potentially pulled it off. But once Danny Glover and Mel Gibson got into a room together and did their first script read, Donner and everybody knew that they had captured lightning in a bottle, that their chemistry was off the charts right from the start, and the studio knew that this was going to be something that added something new and different to the over-the-top 80s action genre, and that they had found the right guys to play these roles.
No, I don't got a double chin.
Yes, you do. Here it is right there, man.
Come on, we're getting old.
No. We are. Yeah, we're doing that, man. You know, but
So they reworked the script and their ages and everything to make it make sense, although both of them are actually much younger than their characters are playing, which is strange in Hollywood. Usually it goes the other way, where somebody's older trying to portray younger. From there, they were off and running. Donner brought the kinetic, exciting direction. Boehm smoothed out the rough edges of Black's script. Gibson and Glover's dynamic on-screen energy of flawed and realistic heroes reshaped Lethal Weapon 1 into the summer blockbuster that the future films would become. So the story, it's nothing groundbreaking, but maybe at its time it kind of was. Just an old cop partnered with a suicidal loose cannon to solve a murder mystery that turns personal. Donner saw the potential in the script because the action was motivated by character and character development more than sheer action spectacle. Which is true. That at that time, you had stuff like Rambo and Commando that was really dominating the action space. And I think that this really does feel different because that it is character motivated. There was real depth to explore with these characters, their daily lives, their family struggles, mental health struggles, issues of aging, personal lives affected by corruption, and the 80s drug war. Roger's family dynamic becomes a central piece of the entire franchise.
Mr. Riggs, would you like that tart?
Thank you. Yeah, call me Martin.
Martin.
this is Mr. Riggs. Sit down.
Which starts with Riggs being welcomed into the family, and every film after adding more cast to the growing family. Kind of like the first version of Fast and the Furious.
I don't have friends. I got family.
Roger is the more realistic, grounded character with real-life situations to keep the series going. I really think it's interesting the way that they show how he handles the different aspects of his life. I think his performance in the first film specifically is so good. I love watching him try to understand, butt heads, and then warm up to Gibson's character. The way he juggles so many aspects of his character's personality, being a good dad, a good husband, taking on a new crazy partner, contemplating the future, solving crimes, being socially conscious, and living with all the flaws. It's hard not to say that Gibson isn't a standout in that film. Like it's kind of like a Heath Ledger Joker thing where you can't take your eyes off him every time he's on the screen. But Roger Glover's performance in that first film is so damn good. I love so many moments of him reacting to what's going on with Riggs, and just the different ways that he handles it, whether he gets on board with Riggs or butts heads with Riggs. It's just, I don't know, their dynamic together is what made this a long-running series. A lot of the great work is there with Glover's performance. I think he's just such a standout.
Yeah, I totally agree. They're both equally standouts. And, you know, I like what you said, that the story of this one is fine. It's I don't want to call it cookie cutter because, like you said, there is this great family dynamic. But it's Murtaugh and Riggs meeting each other, not liking each other at first. I know that became sort of a formulaic type of device to put in sort of buddy cop movies. But the way they handled it in this one, with just them being totally polar opposites, it works so good. And the first one's, I don't want to say it's the only one that really tackles their friendship, because after this one, it's sort of off to the races. They're best friends. This one, they get to know each other and become friends. And it's the only one that does that. Even, there's a couple other films where they have some hiccups here and there, but this is the only one that has the drama between the two. I'm always torn on this. I feel that there are more threatening villains in other films, but this one has the best villains, if that makes sense. Gary Busey, Mr. Joshua, like, this movie almost doesn't work if you don't have that character in it. Like, because he's not even the main villain. He's the right-hand man. But he just, you were talking about, like, you can't take your eyes off Mel Gibson's Riggs when he's on screen. Same goes for Gary Busey in this movie.
Yeah, I can agree with that. He really does. He outshines all the other villains in the movie, which, it's mainly the general. Yeah! I don't know which movie has my favorite villain, but there's something about the performance of Gary Busey that stands out. Maybe he's a more well-known actor. Like, I don't even know the names of the actors who portrayed the villains in part 2.
It's really just Mr. Joshua as a character. Like, he just stands out in every scene he's in, And it's
funny to think, like, how subdued and intense he is when normally Gary Busey is just off the charts, over the top in everything he does.
Right, which he does do finally in the final fight of this movie. Through Christmas! Well, I mean, even when he's blowing up Murtaugh's house with a machine gun, it's great. It's so funny.
They introduce a lot of fun, small roles that continue on throughout the series, like the captain, who is Richard Donner's cousin, I believe.
Yep.
That actor. The psychologist, who's Robert Zemeckis' wife. All of the family members, I think, do a great job. I think they're all good. I'm happy that they were able to keep that group of actors coming back. The oldest daughter, Rianne, she's actually a pretty good actress. Like, she has to put up, especially in the first film, she has to do a lot, like being kidnapped and getting in the midst of the action and everything like that. So
yeah, she's a big part of the first one. Yeah,
and she's good in that one. On these rewatches, it was interesting to see how they gloss over her boyfriend being killed. Probably one of the most forced parts of the script, in my opinion, is when they
blonde with big dimples.
Yeah. Like, I had to set that scene up a few scenes earlier where she mentions that's what he looks like. And then that's the description given over the radio. Out of all the people on planet Earth, those two, like, Murtaugh has to be the one told that same line of, I don't know. It's very forced. But then
it's a high school kid.
It's a high school kid, and we move on without any mention of it. Yeah. The final scene is Rianne opening the door and smiling at Riggs, like, "Hey, we're welcoming you into the family." 24 hours ago, your boyfriend was, like, brutally killed, So I don't know that I never really paid attention to that line, I think, that closely before, and it was like, that kid's dead, and no one seems to care much.
I mean, I know I've thought about it before, but yeah, they never make mention of it again.
Donner can do any genre, as he had proven leading up to Lethal Weapon with films like, the wildly different films that he had success with The Omen, a classic horror, very violent, very religious, and just, like, it is everything that you want a good 70s, even into the 80s style horror film to be. And then Superman is so different. You've got this populous, fun, colorful, like, just opposite end of the spectrum in terms of its positivity of what The Omen brought to screens. And then moving on into things like The Goonies. Like, it's just, every film is kind of so different. So when you get to Lethal Weapon, it is a little bit unexpected until Lethal Weapon 1 and 2 existed in the world. Then it was like, hey, that's kind of a Richard Donner style. But with this first film, he was kind of even reinventing himself to some degree. He just really proved that he's the right choice, because this film, instead of just being what the 80s action genre kind of was at the time, which was bombastic and focused on the spectacle of the action itself, and the characters were usually underwritten, this one is trying to blend so many genres into one and not just focus on just the action, but bring the drama and bring a little bit of humor. You know, there's enough humor in this first one that it doesn't feel out of place with the humor you get from the other films.
I've always loved Donner, and you could call him a working man's director, maybe because he is so prolific at different styles and different aesthetics. I still do feel there's a similarity in all his films, whether that be he loves to use background characters, reactions, i.e. Superman. You know,
Hey, Jim! Whoa! Excuse me. That's a bad outfit!
a lot of people commenting and great shots of the crowd. I think Raimi even took some inspiration from that when he did the Spider-Man movies. Mm-hmm. Like, oh my God, look at that! You know, things like that. And he even does that in Lethal Weapon. Like all the surroundings and everything, they're not isolated to the filmmaking. You know, it's not like, oh, here's an action set piece. Like, no, there's people in the way, and you know, movies used to do that a lot more. They focused on the overall environment instead of just, okay, we're gonna have two characters running. Why are there no cars in the street? Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And that's one of the things he does so good with his budgets, specifically in these Lethal Weapon movies, is create really good action that looks broad, and it looks like it's affecting the environment around what you're watching, which can be obviously very expensive to shoot, at least nowadays. But I think Lethal Weapon 1 and 2 are so special. They're such special movies because they just have that perfect, you know, I mean, we'll get into 2 when we get into 2, but the jump of the specialness and the wonderful reception to Lethal Weapon in that 1.5, barely 2 years turnaround to get a second one made and have the second one be as good as it was. Yeah, that's very hard to accomplish.
It seemed like that's what Hollywood was good at back in the day. Like, I know some people have their thoughts on how like a Predator 2 or a Die Hard 2 or whatever turned out, but it was like Hollywood was able to kind of turn around a pretty good sequel in 2 years and have the same vibe and feel that you loved from the original.
Yeah, the industry is just so drastically different now. You know, it's all these things getting in the way of just automatically not just greenlighting. Like, sequels are greenlit all the time these days. They're just never made. You know? So.
Yeah. But other key crew members on the first film, some of these people continue on throughout most of the series, but Michael Kamen, we got to give a shout out to. I feel like this is such an iconic score, and not just the action side of it. The action side is pulse pounding, and you know, you totally know what film you're hearing when you hear that score. But then you have the saxophone and the guitar riffs that play. Specifically, the guitar riffs are for Gibson's character, and the saxophones used for Roger's character. Eric Clapton does all the guitar work, which I think he continues to do it through the entire series. In fact, I didn't write down the guy's name who does the saxophone, but I believe the three of them, Michael Kamen doing the main score, Eric Clapton, and then the other guy doing the saxophone, have come back for all the films.
I think the saxophone player, his name is David Sanborn.
Yes, that is.
I'll tell you something, John. I despise the saxophone as an instrument. It just makes my ears bleed. I don't know why. It's not a choice. It's just a physical reaction. I love it in these movies. Because it just works, and you're so spot on. That's Murtaugh's signature song, you know, or theme or whatever.
And then when you get the really intense but the very serious moments, Riggs contemplating suicide and stuff, the way the guitar music comes in on those scenes.
Can we talk about his acting in that scene? Oh my God, dude. Like, that scene stuck with me so much as a kid. Like, what is this guy going through? You know, because I saw it the year it came out, not in the theater, but I did see it when I was 10 or whatever. And I would always just look at that scene and go, what is happening? What's wrong with this person? You know, because I didn't quite understand everything at the time. And you grow to appreciate it as you get older, and you feel depression and you feel sadness and you feel loss specifically. And man, he just owns it. Just like right off the bat, like Mr. Tough Guy. He's introduced smoking a cigarette, butt naked, throwing dog treats to his dog, chugging a beer. And then 2 scenes later, he's crying, you know, like by himself. It's amazing.
And again, I don't know, like at whatever point he acted that scene out in front of Donner, that's what cemented the role for him, because it was like, that is so different, as you're pointing out. Like, he's introduced like any other action hero of the 80s, but you never see that kind of side of any of those, of a Stallone, of a Schwarzenegger, of whoever it was at that time. Lesser names like Chuck Norris and Charles Bronson, but you're not going to get that kind of performance out of any of those characters. They just didn't exist in the world of action movies. So to your point, for that to happen so early in the film, to be like, this guy is a real guy, and I don't care how tough he is, and you know, is willing to jump off of a building with a guy. I know that scene hadn't happened yet, but like, doesn't matter what we see this guy do, you always go back to that scene and know how broken he is.
And that scene sets the stage, like you said, for his actions moving forward in the movie. His recklessness, jumping off the building. Yeah, it breaks him down as a character before he even meets, you know, his second half. And the movies you're describing, like the Chuck Norrises and like Charles Bronson, those movies don't allow their characters that kind of breathing room. You know, I don't know how many takes they did of that. His crying, I mean, obviously he's really crying, but he's doing it in a way where, I don't know if you've ever sat alone and cried and talked to yourself. I have. I don't know how he did that with like lighting guys and focus pullers right up in his face. Like, it's incredible. I think
he's a very talented actor. He's never.
Yeah, I know. It's like, that question could be chalked up to, he's an actor, he's used to it, but it's just so gripping. It's so sad, and like, you know, just putting the gun down and god damn it, like he can't do it. Yeah. He's holding the picture of his wife.
I always think about when he won his Oscar for Braveheart, and he got up there and he's like, you know what I really want to do is act. It's like, yeah, man, you can. I know you don't get the credit for it, but you can.
Well, like most directors, I suppose what I really want to do is act. But
Glover's standout kind of moment, when right after the jumper scene, and he realizes, man, you really are suicidal. You have a true death wish. And he pulls him into that side store, and it just, the look in his eyes and how furious he is, and how like he tries to close the door. And we've all kind of done this, where you think, I'm gonna slam this door shut and make an impact, but the door swings. The way it just keeps swinging open. It doesn't make that kind of moment that you would expect of a door closing.
That always stood out to me.
Like, pisses him off. He's so like so ferocious in his movements, and then it just gets into, you know, they're right in each other's faces, and he tempts him with the gun. And
I love the line where he's like, "Come here." He's like, "Where? Here with me."
Hey, come here. Come where? Here with me.
Yeah. And Gibson really is like, what's going on? What are you upset about? He really does startle him. He's barely even out of the inflatable land pad, and he's kind of laughing, like thinking, you know, he's his typical self of like, whatever, I don't care, I got the guy down. And just out of nowhere, Glover starts grabbing at him, and he reacts like, who's grabbing me? Do I need to fucking fight this guy? And just their reactions, it's so real. There are so many moments. Donner and everybody saw it when these two guys came to read together. They're like, we can do anything with these two guys, and it's going to come across as real. It's going to come across as, I know the bond wasn't there yet in one. They're supposed to be butting heads, but you could see how it would grow into what that relationship becomes across the series.
I've always been curious about the scene where Murtaugh takes the gun, and he's like, "Here, put it in your mouth." He's like, "You don't think I'll do it?" He's tempting him to do it because he's, like you said, he's so pissed off. Does Riggs pull the trigger?
Yes,
he does. Right?
And he has to get his hand in there, his finger in between the hammer,
his thumb, to block the firing pin.
Yeah, think about how that would feel.
That's fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up the editor, Stuart Baird.
Yeah.
I believe only got to work on the first two films, and then I think they went in a different direction. Well, I think I pointed out to you that he started directing films kind of around that time. So
you did. I didn't know that.
Moving up in the Hollywood food chain. And honestly, if I looked at his film career, I don't think his directing gigs paid off as well. And I think he ended up going back to being an editor on still.
And that's fine, because he's one of the best action editors in the business, or was. I don't know if he's still doing it, but... Yeah, Last Boy Scout, Die Hard 2, Superman, Skyfall, Lady Hawk. He's done some of the best shit.
He did Skyfall?
Yeah, he did Skyfall.
Yeah, that does point to that I think
came
Didn't
back.
have the success he wanted as a director and went back to being a top editor.
Sometimes you're a better storyteller in one facet of filmmaking and the other not so much, you know? I totally get it. But yeah, the editing in this one, part 2, that's probably why these two are such higher. I mean, they're better scripts as well, but they're just in higher regard because the action's more kinetic. It's more exciting.
Well, let's talk about the action. The last act is so, like, once you get to like the desert scene, it doesn't really slow down at all. It's just fast-paced, exciting action for the last 20-30 minute block of the movie. Leading up to that, there's smaller action scenes. It has a $15 million budget, so it wasn't pushing the bounds of what action spectacle they could bring to the screen. They kept it small, intimate shootouts and things like that. But because of the direction and the editing and the music as well, the combination of the three, every action scene feels thrilling and exciting, even if it's just a small shootout or falling into a pool or whatever it is. Like they make it all pretty thrilling all the way throughout.
A lot of it has to do with you're invested in these guys,
Yes.
And his family.
Exactly.
I don't know if you've ever seen the original, the alternate Riggs introduction scene with the mad shooter that's shooting at kids in the building. Have you seen that?
I heard about it, and I think I've seen
online.
a clip of it, but I don't know that I've watched it in context with the film.
It's fun. It doesn't work as well as the tree lot scene because the tree lot scene is so casual. He's just sitting there with these guys. The other one is this big. He's walking up the street, and he's the camera's focusing on him, and it's a little too flashy for this movie. But if you have time to check it out, it's pretty interesting. But no, the Christmas tree lot scene is a lot of fun. But my nitpick, and it's been my nitpick with all of these films, is they are homicide detectives. That's what they are. They say it a bunch of times.
Not in that scene. He is still in the narcotics department.
Oh, okay. Oh, is that right? Okay, my bad.
Yes, that's what they say when he's
When
he's transferred, they say he's transferring from narcotics. Now,
my bad.
It was like the day before. Does everything move that quick? I thought there's a lot of bureaucracy where it would take a while to make that transfer happen properly. But whatever. It seems like seems like the day before he was narcotics, and now he's moving over to homicide.
Okay, so I stand corrected on that one. I forgot.
No. You're bringing up an excellent point that I want to bring up as we go through the series because they never are doing their jobs.
I'll bring
jobs.
I'll definitely bring it back up when I do 2 because 2 has the same problem.
It's like, who are they working for? Narcotics? Are they working for Bomb Squad? They are never doing the work.
Are they cops with the international slave trade? What the hell's going on?
What the hell is going on? The final fight could have been edited and shot better. It's very choppy.
Yeah,
it's still very
exciting.
exciting. Riggs has to get the nightstick tossed to him, and he starts using that to defend himself in really cool, creative ways. It makes the fight extends the fight and kind of gives him a second chance there.
Mad Max, it's his Thunderdome.
Yeah. I mean, there's great stuff in that final fight, but it's a little bit choppy. I wish we could see a little bit more of what's going on.
But like with everything in this movie, it's so personal and intimate. It's like cops are just watching. It doesn't have that big spectacle ending. You get that throughout the other parts where Murtaugh goes after the general. And Riggs is chasing Joshua all over the freeway, which is great. Really great stuff.
At this point, it's kind of a cliche, but I don't know if there was another film to point at from before 1987. The final moment of Joshua, he's been defeated, but he's able to grab a cop's gun, and now he's a threat again, and they have to pull their guns and shoot him together. I like that. I like the imagery of it and the way that they both have their guns and everything. It works really well for me. Final action moment to take out the bad guy, because we want to have a final fight with the bad guy, but we can't have our cop ruthlessly kill him in that fight. So we're going to end that fight where both people are still alive, but now we have this moment where the guy gets a gun and you have to shoot him and kill him. And now I feel like that's a cliche. We've seen that.
The very next year with Die Hard, we get the same.
Yeah, Die Hard is one of the big prime examples, but I feel like there's lots of examples of a big fight that ends with them both alive, just to have one more quick little. We want the bad guy to be dead, but we can't have our cop just outright kill him in the final moments.
I think it would have made a better ending if he just got in the car and went to jail, because all these action movies, they lose the plot along the way. You're trying to solve a case and put people in jail, you know, and like they've killed everybody else. I think if Joshua ended up in jail, it just would have, I don't know, I probably would have liked it better than sort of that tacked on. It's a great shot when they both shoot him. It's a really cool shot.
Yeah. But
I don't know. I almost feel like maybe one person should have gone to jail out of all this shit. I can see where that dark script was there, because the opening scene is really kind of horrific and tragic with, you know, a woman who may or may not be a prostitute. Just the look on her face. That actress played it really well with what she had. Well, just like getting up on that thing and looking just totally.
Yeah, it's not even a speaking part, and it's very memorable and works well. Even just a little moment in the videotape later, like her looks on her face sell where she's at in her life.
Yeah, it was just a different kind of humor because, like I said, these two guys are just meeting each other. They're at odds for I don't want to say the whole first half, but for the majority of the first half. So they don't have that banter back and forth yet. Plus, this is the only movie with a very, very, very different Riggs. You know, depressed, serious. But again, he's got a great sense of humor, and his chemistry blows up with Murtaugh right off the bat, even when they're not totally friends. But I always thought the rooftop jumping scene was hilarious. I don't even know if it was supposed to be, but just the way he's like, "You want to do it? I want to do it.
Do you wanna? Well, then that's fine with me. Let's do it, asshole. Let's do it. I want to do it. I want to do it."
It had a $15 million budget, which is, you know, not huge at its time, but I guess that went a long way. It made $65 million domestically, so obviously a nice return on that, and 120 total worldwide. So on a $15 million budget, it's considered a massive hit, and you can see why they rushed to get a sequel going, and they knew that they had something special with this cast. And so, yeah, thankfully we got an amazing sequel that came very quickly.
Movies nowadays do not make over 10 times their budget. Not usually.
Because their budgets are too high.
Their budgets are too high. And yeah, that's a killer return, man. I mean,
when we think about stuff like Aliens is 18 million and this is 15 million, and these films will never not be part of the social consciousness and you know, spawned series that tons and tons of films that spawned off of these original hits. I know Aliens is not the original film of the series, but it certainly has a big hand for why we're still watching Alien movies to this day. 2 incidences that took place in Vietnam are mentioned in the first Lethal Weapon. One being the Air America CIA operation, where they were smuggling guns and drugs and other goods or whatever. The Tom Atkins character says that he was part of the Air America operation.
Hi, I'm Tom Atkins, and if you love the holidays, you love eggnog. It doesn't matter when or where you have it, it's just a glorious treat. However, despite popular opinion, it does not save you from a bullet.
And the other Vietnam instance that was mentioned is Murtaugh says that Tom Atkins' character saved his life, and Riggs was asking what that was about, and he was stabbed in the lung during a battle, and Atkins' character is the one that, you know, rescued him and saved his life, and that battle that he was stabbed in is the battle that was the basis for the movie We Were Soldiers. So both We Were Soldiers and Air America are movies that Mel Gibson went on to star in. You were talking about how Donner puts a lot of like background people and kind of fills out the world, so it's not just the main actors that are populating the space and this world. And when you were saying that, I was thinking about, oh yeah, like even in the early scenes where, even though she's a character who needs to be a part of the story, but like the hooker that witnessed the crime, and you know, the people that were around the hotel in that initial investigation of the murder. But then in the later scenes where they go to Dixie, the hooker's house, and you have the little kids, which their performances are terrible. Like that's one of the worst parts of the movie in terms of like listening to little Alfred trying to spit out.
Don't tell him your name, Alfred.
Yeah, that's bad. But that does feel like more of that, like building out the world with all these characters that just happen to be around and living in this real space. but also to point out in that specific scene, which I think is just by chance and by luck of when you're pointing a camera, but when the house explodes, that jet airplane that is taking off right over the house in that moment is just wild. Like,
it
can
is.
you imagine being on that plane and seeing from the air some giant explosion in downtown LA and being like, what was that shit?
What's happening down there?
But yeah, I think it's just happenstance that the plane fills the frame the way that it does. But I don't know, it makes it like an even more realistic and kind of dynamic shot in that moment.
Again, it shows that when you're filmmaking back then, the environment was just as important to everything else that's going on in the scene, and not just a focus on the scene itself. It's like nowadays they would just remove the plane, and it's like, why?
Exactly.
Why would you remove it?
It
costs a lot of money to block off an entire block in Los Angeles.
Like, are they they're just getting away with filming and letting the real world around them be the real world around them?
Murtaugh's time in Vietnam. It's also never, ever, ever made mention again, ever in this entire franchise. Not even to Riggs when he meets Riggs and asks him, like, oh, so you were Special Forces. Here's what I was. I was part of this infantry. Nothing. Like, they never mention it again.
When Riggs talks about what he did in the war, I can't remember if Murtaugh says anything
He
about
doesn't. Those are the scenes I was wondering, why isn't he talking to him about his stuff? You know,
because he didn't do anything as crazy as like what Riggs was. Riggs was like Black Ops or whatever, whereas I think Murtaugh was just a regular infantry.
I just found it odd when he's like, oh, you're one of those Special Forces guys, that he just didn't even say, I too was in such and such. But I mean, it's not a big deal. It's just something I noticed.
Well, maybe if he's just a regular infantry, well, you would know better than me, Ben, how military people feel, but is there some, like, if you're talking to a Special Forces, you kind of feel like I can't really bring up my service because it's not.
No, not at all. Not at all. Battle's battle. Like if I was partnered up with somebody that was a military person, it's because it builds this kind of unspoken bond immediately, you know, but it's fine. I mean, the script's great. I just a little tiny stupid nitpick.
Here is my list of Lethal Weapon tropes that the first film created, and almost every film is able to keep it going. Not every film has every single one of these elements. Murtaugh's shooting style, the way that he gets his perfect aim with twisting his head and everything. We're too old for this shit. That comment and that sentiment. Murtaugh's car being damaged or his house. There are dogs worked into every screenplay in some way. The Three Stooges shows up in every screenplay to some degree. Roger's boat shows up in every screenplay to some degree. There are always hijinks at the police station. This one probably has the least amount of that, but you do kind of have that one moment where Murtaugh first does see Riggs pulling his gun out and tries to go after him and gets dropped to the floor.
Yeah, meet your new partner.
Yeah, that's what I'm accrediting as the police station hijinks in this film. It's the least amount of it across the series, but it's there. Roger being half naked in some scene throughout the movie. This one starting with him in the bathtub. Riggs chasing a vehicle on foot and almost catching it. The psych evaluations that go on throughout the series. There's an aspect of bombs in almost every film. And fighting over the driving. Who's going to be doing the driving? Those are the ones that I would say this film established, and most every film after has some aspect of that.
I don't know if this is really a trope, definitely not started by Lethal Weapon, but Riggs, his unlimited use of clips for his Beretta that just come out of nowhere in his back pocket. How many are in his pockets? But that's just an action movie. But you know, as an action movie itself, its action set pieces are placed so perfectly, and this movie's paced so well. Every action scene escalates in violence and in spectacle and in tension. You know, when you first see a helicopter for the first time and Riggs is shooting at it, you're like, okay, well now we're getting off the streets and we're going to be in almost like a war, like a shootout, you know. And I love how each action scene grows and grows and spends as much time as it needs to keep developing its plot and what's happening with our characters throughout. And there are 31 kills in Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, I did not start looking into the kill count, really.
That's right. I got them in front of me.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Like, horror movies are always like, we killed 10 people in our movie. We're crazy violent. This is 3 times the amount.
But here's the thing: you have unnamed henchmen, unnamed henchmen, another. Yeah. There's a lot of. I mean, but yeah, it's very violent. But yeah, that's a good amount of kills. It's a good amount of kills.